Right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. This is Song and Sermon because that's the way we do it. It sounds better to say sermon and song, but that's not the order it comes in, so we're not going to say it that way. This evening, because it's evening right now, I'm going to play a song that has a considerable history. It was originally part of the written by a Methodist preacher during the Great Awakening in the first decade of the 1800s. And one gentleman who heard it performed, it was called Let Thy Kingdom, Blessed Savior. One person who heard it performed said that it made the flesh tremble on me and caused an awful sense of the hereafter to press on my mind. After which he converted to Christianity. I mean, when you say something like that, really you have no alternative but to convert to something. The song then made its way into the African community, the African American slave community, and reappeared in the 1880s as a part of African American gospel songs, and was performed in its almost current state by Struthers. What was his first name? Jimmy Struthers, who had been blinded in a mining accident and made his living in minstrel or medicine shows and playing on street corners. And this was one of the songs he played, and it was recorded by Alan Lomax and Harold Spivak on behalf of the Library of Congress to preserve these slave songs, these former slave songs. And they had to record it in Virginia prison penitentiary because Jimmy Struthers, as is fairly normal with African Americans, spent a good deal of his time in the penitentiary. Happily, he was released by the governor some years later and was able to spend the rest of his life free. This song, having been recorded by the Library of Congress, made its way into American folklore, where Jorma Kaukonen of the Jefferson Airplane heard it performed when he was a child, and he learned it and then recreated it for the Jefferson Airplane. Its original title was, as I said, Let Thy Kingdom, Blessed Savior. Then it became Keep Away from the Bloodstained Banders, which is what happens when people like Jimmy Struthers get a hold of songs. And Jorma Kaukonen renamed it O Good Shepherd. And considering tonight's gospel reading, it's an appropriate choice, I think, for us to listen to. And please, if you wouldn't mind actually looking these things up and following through on them, you'll learn more than you're able to get from me. So here's O Good Shepherd. If you want to get to heaven, over on the other shore, stay out of the way of the blood-stained bandit. Oh, good shepherd, feed my sheep. One for Paul, one for Silas, one for to make my heart rejoice. Can you hear my lambs are calling? Oh, good shepherd, feed my sheep. If you want to get to heaven, over on the other shore, stay out of the way of the long-tongued lion. away from the bloodstained banders. That's always good advice. I'll come back in a moment and see if we can't make some meaning out of this. Okay, right. Hello again. Dr. William Painter here, coming to you from Wonderland. I've got your name poster on one side. I've got Middle Earth on the other side. Funny little pineapple lights over here. And if I turn my desk chair, you can see my friends, the penguins. If I turn a little more, whoops, you can't see him unless I move out of the way. There we go. It is. There he is. Right. Enough fancifulness. Let's get down to serious business. Today is, I think, the fourth Sunday after Easter. Is that right? Yeah, I got it right. Fourth Sunday of Easter. We are Easter people. This is what Easter's all about, and this is what Christianity is all about, is the Easter. Our gospel for today is John chapter 10, verses 11 through 18. So let's just get that read. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand, who is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep, sees the wolf and leaves the sheep and runs away. The wolf snatches them and scatters them. The hired hand runs away because a hired hand does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that do not belong to this fold. I must bring them also. They will listen to my voice. There will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life in order to take it up again. No one takes it up from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it up again. I have received this command from my Father. That is the gospel for this week. And what a wonderful passage that is. That's why I chose the song "O Good Shepherd" to play and to have it wandering around in your mind as we do the sermon part, because this passage here is really the core of Christianity. Let's just take a step out of the actual text itself and consider the context. It was written around 90 CE. Jerusalem had been burned to the ground, and the Jews had been slaughtered in the streets by the Romans in 70. So this passage that we read tonight was written 20 years after that. So if you think about where we are here in 2021, 20 years ago was 2001. We were just getting over the fact that the world didn't collapse when the year 2000 rolled around. That was 20 years ago. And 20 years after the destruction of Jerusalem, the Johannine community writes this passage that actually describes a moment, obviously prior to the crucifixion of Jesus, where Jesus is talking to an audience. Now, when you read the Bible, remember we're like observers. We're like the audience in a stage play, and we're watching the characters on the stage interact with each other. And with who's interacting here is Jesus talking to the Pharisees. So he's talking to the Pharisees, and what he's basically telling them is that this is what a good shepherd does, this is what a hired hand does, and this is what a good shepherd does. It's a nice little good shepherd sandwich with a very accurate description of the bad shepherd, or the hired hand, who, when threatened with disaster, runs away. Well, that's what the Pharisees did during the destruction of Jerusalem. They ran away. They went to Jamnia and began reconstructing Judaism from there, abandoning their flock and their people. And here is Jesus saying, that's not good leadership. That's not what being a shepherd is all about. Being a shepherd is about being willing to lay down your life for the sheep. Now, it also describes an interesting relationship, or series of relationships, because it's an intimate relationship. The relationship that Jesus has with or the speaker here, Jesus has with his sheep, with his flock, is an intimate one. He knows them, and they know him. And then he says, just like I know the Father and the Father knows me. It is inconceivably impossible. It is inconceivable at all for a human being to have any comprehension beyond just the idea of a God. I mean, the definition of God is that it omnipotent, omnipresent, unknowable, and we can't know. We can't know that. Okay, so if theologically, if you're going to say there's a God, you can't know God. All right, and in fact, in the Old Testament, as people see God, and they burn like a matchstick, or get turned into pillars of salt, or terrible things happen. You don't want to have that moment, which was kind of what made Moses so special. But here's Jesus sort of being. This is the establishment of Jesus as the intermediary. Jesus knows God, Jesus knows the Father, and Jesus knows us, and we know Him. And he also makes a very interesting point here about there are others who don't belong in this fold, but they will know my voice, and they will come. Now, I don't know how much about sheep herding but a proper shepherd can stand in an open field, apparently entirely neglected, empty field, and start calling, and the sheep will come. They will come to him. They know the voice, and they will come to the voice. And the shepherd knows this about the flock. He knows he can go out there and he can stand and go, whatever sounds calls sheep, and they hear it, and they recognize the shepherd's voice, and they come. And notably, they come to be fed. Okay, so they don't come to have a conversation. They come because that's where the food is, and that's where the shepherd is. So when Jesus says they will hear my voice, this is something that was very real and very tangible, very, very touchable for his audience, for the people who are reading this. When you say shepherd and sheep and flock, and a hired hand runs away and the good shepherd stays, that is a powerful message for people, because they say there's a couple of things. You have to know who the good shepherd is. Do you recognize his voice? And knowing also that the hired hand will abandon you at the first opportunity. And I think about where we're at with this pandemic and vaccinations and the new administration, and one of the problems I had with the previous administration, the previous shepherd, was that I didn't recognize his voice as being my shepherd. He voiced things like racist dog whistles and authoritarian points of view and disparaging whole elements of our community, whether you were gay or whether you were trans or whether you were handicapped or disabled or whether you were learning challenged, whether you were poor. The world became worse because of this person. He was a bad shepherd, and the people around him were bad shepherds as well, and at the first sign of trouble they leave. And I have to say that while I feel more comfortable with better shepherds, we can always use a better shepherd, because we know people are getting vaccinated. We know we have lost people in this year. I heard on the radio today that India, one person every 5 minutes is dying of COVID. I have seen on Facebook people that I'm friends with, or you're not really friends, but you friend them. That's a verb on Facebook, and they're Indian, and they're posting up. My father died, my niece died, my aunt died, my grandmother died. There are heartbreaking videos of physicians who are exhausted beyond belief, while people are dying, waiting to get it. They can't get oxygen. There's no oxygen. It's a rare commodity there, and it's very expensive there. And that's what you need when you get COVID, is you need oxygen, because you can't process oxygen. One of the things you have to have is a oximeter, right, to check how much oxygen you have in your body, and they can't get it. And their shepherds were not good shepherds, just like our shepherds here were not good shepherds. And 556,000 Americans died in a single year. And I think that when we read this passage, it's so uplifting, because it gives us comfort, that there is comfort in a good shepherd, but it also gives us direction. It's not enough to be a hired hand. What's important is to be a good shepherd. I'm taking up the reins of a new enterprise here quite shortly, and I've been trying to map out my management strategy. And there's tons of books written about management strategies, and I realize that the one thing that you need to be a good manager is to be a good shepherd, and to be able to lay your life down for your sheep, and to be able to lead them to green pastures. And that management philosophy is actually a really good philosophy, because people think you're really good, and all you're doing is just trying to be a good shepherd, as opposed to a hired hand. And so I think that as we listen to the song, "Oh, good shepherd, feed my sheep, can't you hear him calling?" And stay away from the bloodstained banders, stay away from the long-tongued liar, stay away from the people who carry guns. It's a good philosophy to have for life. It's about being intimate with people. It's about knowing people. They're not just automatons that show up to work, for example. They are real people with real lives and real challenges, and you're a part of that. Your institution, their job is a big part of that. And I think if we could be better shepherds, then we'd be making a better place for us to live, instead of being hired hands. I'm having a friend over. We are having a friend over for dinner tomorrow night. It's our first dinner since, because we're all vaccinated. As my wife likes to say, we're vaccinated and cooked. We've been through the 2 weeks afterwards, so we're still being careful, still wearing masks. And this woman and her daughter are coming over, and I haven't been able to see her. They're good, dear friends, and she lost her husband during the pandemic, and you get isolated, you get shut in, you get cut off, your bubbles, on purpose, get quite small, and it's hard to be a flock of sheep, when everybody's in a bubble. There's some comfort in numbers, and we haven't been able to have that. We've been kind of alone, and our numbers are small. We're huddled up and quite close and quite intimate. And so this is our first dinner, and I'm going to do all the cooking, and I want to really enjoy it, because I may not be this person's shepherd, but I think if I try to be a good shepherd, that everybody's life gets a little bit better. So I'm going to feed some sheep this weekend, and we're going to smile, and we're going to be thankful, and I hope you are smiling, and I hope you are thankful, and I'll see you in about 3 weeks. God bless, and be safe.